On October 11, 1953, cross-border infiltrators from Jordan attacked the Israeli village of Yehud, throwing a grenade into a home and killing a mother and two young children. In response, Israeli Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion authorized a harsh retaliatory strike. The newly formed Special Operations Unit, Unit 101, led by Ariel Sharon, was ordered to target the frontier village of Qibya to serve as a deterrent.
So like a curious traveler on a quest, we embark upon a journey of information. Stay with us for a ride into knowledge.
The tiny village of Qibya on the Israel-Jordan border is in ruins as dazed survivors relate how troops from Palestine struck across the frontier at night.
The Qibya crisis erupted following an Israeli military raid when military forces attacked the West Bank village, killing 69 Palestinian civilians and blowing up dozens of homes. The Eisenhower administration was furious. The U.S. State Department sharply condemned the attack and temporarily suspended economic aid to Israel, $65 million at the time. Facing immense backlash, Prime Minister Ben-Gurion initially made a radio address falsely claiming that no military unit was involved and blaming angry Israeli border residents. At the end of the day, this incident caused a severe diplomatic rift between the United States and Israel, triggering intense international condemnation and directly prompting the creation of the organization that became AIPAC. Then, over the next 70 years, this group engineered its transformation from a defensive 1950s public relations committee into an elite political juggernaut by shifting its methods across three distinct eras, moving from information distribution to network-driven legislative lobbying, and finally, to direct multi-million-dollar electoral intervention. To evade demands from the Department of Justice to register as a foreign agent, the group pivoted away from formal Zionist agencies, changed its name to AIPAC in 1959, and established itself as an entirely domestic American citizen organization. Backed heavily by billionaire donors, AIPAC now functions as one of the largest outside spenders in American elections. Their current strategy focuses heavily on the primary election process, specifically pouring tens of millions of dollars into Democratic primaries to systematically defeat progressive candidates or incumbents who voice any public criticism of Israeli government policy. Back to President Dwight D. Eisenhower. He restored economic aid to Israel also in October of 1953 because Israel complied with a specific United Nations demand regarding a disputed water diversion project. And while the public and the media heavily connected the aid freeze to the global outrage surrounding the Qibya massacre, the official technical trigger for the sanctions was a separate geopolitical dispute over the Jordan River. Once Israel backed down on that front, Eisenhower lifted the freeze. Sounds convenient, but Eisenhower did not hesitate to use severe financial leverage against Israel when he felt U.S. core interests were truly threatened. Because just a few years later, during the 1956 Suez Crisis, when Israel secretly conspired with Britain and France to invade Egypt, Eisenhower was genuinely unyielding. He didn't back down. Instead, he threatened to tank the British currency and cut off all public and private American aid to Israel. This immense pressure forced Israel to completely withdraw from the Sinai Peninsula, showing that while he compromised on the 1953 water dispute, he held the line when major global stability was at risk. So, as president, Eisenhower did not harbor personal animosity toward Jewish people, but he was indifferent to their specific political concerns and maintained a very tense relationship with the State of Israel. Eisenhower and his Secretary of State, John Foster Dulles, believed the U.S. needed to be even-handed in the Middle East to prevent Arab nations from aligning with the Soviet Union. and because of this, his administration frequently locked horns with Israel. Unlike Truman or later presidents, Eisenhower did not include Jewish advisors in his inner circle and rarely engaged with American Jewish organizations on domestic policy. While not labeled an anti-Semite, Eisenhower does face targeted historical critiques from Jewish scholars. Do we need another Eisenhower? Eisenhower's historical record of fiercely guarding U.S. foreign policy independence. Most historians agree he would not tolerate the level of influence that AIPAC wields today. As a leader who fundamentally believed that no narrow interest group, whether domestic, foreign, or commercial, should dictate American national security, Eisenhower would likely view modern AIPAC as a direct challenge to presidential authority. In Eisenhower's era, AIPAC was a small, information-based lobby group with a budget of roughly $50,000, legally barred from donating money to politicians. But today, AIPAC's Super PAC, the United Democracy Project, pours tens of millions of dollars into elections to defeat political candidates who cross them. If you remember, Eisenhower famously used his farewell address to warn the American public against the corrupting influence of the military-industrial complex, the collusion between defense contractors, the military, and Congress. Historians suggest he would view a multi-million-dollar, single-issue foreign policy lobby in the exact same light, a structural threat that compromises a politician's primary duty to the United States. Dwight D. Eisenhower was not an America First isolationist. As the 34th U.S. President and former Supreme Allied Commander, he championed internationalism, actively building global alliances like NATO, utilizing foreign aid, and committing the U.S. to containing global communism during the Cold War. Eisenhower shared a worldview rooted in evaluating leaders, nations, and systems by their practical, tangible outcomes, their fruits, rather than just their rhetoric. He famously emphasized functional results, practical morality, and the preservation of free, industrious societies over ideological posturing. Oh, and by the way, President Dwight D. Eisenhower viewed Gaza as a major geopolitical flashpoint and famously forced Israel to withdraw its military forces from the territory. His stance on Gaza was defined entirely by his handling of the 1956 Suez Crisis. Eisenhower would almost certainly clash sharply and fundamentally with Benjamin Netanyahu. President Eisenhower's strict, legalistic approach to foreign policy, combined with his view that no ally was exempt from American control, stands in direct opposition to Netanyahu's political ideology and wartime strategy. Netanyahu's hawkish political roots stem from revisionist Zionism, a movement championed by his father, Benzion Netanyahu, who actually lobbied Eisenhower's administration in the 1950s. Eisenhower largely rejected this faction. Netanyahu has spent decades skillfully navigating and occasionally bypassing American presidential pressure. Eisenhower would not tolerate this. I like Ike, and miss him too.